Tate McRae is no stranger to the spotlight. At just 13, she was a finalist on So You Think You Can Dance. At 14, she went viral on YouTube as a singer and eventually signed with RCA in 2019. In 2020, her first hit, You Broke Me First, hit the top 20. Tate would modestly chart and even drop her first record, I Used to Think I Could Fly, but it wasn't really until she dropped Greedy in September of this year that she got her first global #1 hit and entered the pop girl conversation. Greedy was a slick Ryan Tedder co-produced anthem that really harkened back to fellow Canadian pop idol Nelly Furtado's Promiscuous. With her new album Think Later out, is Tate McRae set to become a mainstay or a one-hit wonder? Let's find out in this quick review where I'll share my overall thoughts and go through each track before assigning a score. Tate McRae has always been on my radar. She has this unique voice and a good ear for hooks. There's always been a lean towards melancholy in her music though. Even her upbeat songs have this depressive undertone to them. Greedy and its follow-up single X's definitely hinted at a more upbeat record. Think Later feels like a compromise between her new persona and her usual sad girl self. Her first record was not cohesive production-wise. Think Later is executively co-produced by OneRepublic's Ryan Tedder, which gives it a pretty coherent sound throughout, which is an improvement for me. Still, I was surprised how a couple of these tracks ended up being guitar-heavy, mid-tempo tracks. One particular track, Stay Done, really surprised me. The alt-rock influence on here makes it a really nice contrast to Greedy. The lyrics are relatable, they're pretty melancholic about not being done with a toxic ex who seems to reel her back in. The guitar riff is really the earworm. However, X's coming right after is really jarring, and the track listing is very scattershot. Thematically, this record is a heartbreak record. Greedy had actually been rumored to be partly about her ex, hockey player Cole Sillinger, who had cheated on her, hence the hockey imagery of the record. However, this isn't really focused, there's no thesis. It's a collection of scattered thoughts and moments. Lyrically speaking, Tate is actually a pretty solid writer, but there's nothing really too special here. There's no quotable t-shirt worthy lines in here aside from sad girl bit got a little boring in the opener. I already see people calling this album a bit bland. A couple of the tracks do actually bleed together in a way that had me questioning where one ended and the other started. It also doesn't help that each track is pretty short. That being said, Greedy just being 2 minutes and 10 seconds is a marvel to me. It feels complete even though they did stuff 3 pretty decent verses into it. Considering this is just her second record and the first to have a major hit attached to it, Think Later's pretty solid, but it did remind me a bit of Camila Cabello's debut record. They have this similar bait and switch feel to it. Ironically, I do think Camila and her sound quite alike. Nonetheless, I do think that there are some gems in this album beyond the singles, which I really dug. Here we go, track by track. The opener, Cut My Hair, wastes no time in setting the tone. This one's a downbeat, sad girl banger that shares DNA with Tate's earlier works. The metaphor of her cutting her hair seems to indicate her shift away in genre from rock towards a more R&B sound. I really appreciate the pre-chorus, which is a bit more dynamic and stronger than the hook itself. It really gives Thank You Next light. Greedy follows, and I'll be honest when I say this is my most played song of the year. It's pop perfection, the cocky lyrics, the confidence of it all, the beautiful hidden harmony in the back. It has these hypnotic chimes and a strong drum line, and again the chorus, it's empowering, it's hot, it makes you feel like an absolute baddie. The verses tell a story of her shutting down this man who's twice her age before she launches into a tirade about how she'd want herself. And the video alone, I mean, come on, it's a star-making hit. Run for the Hills returns us back to melancholic Tate. I feel like the hook's the real star here. It's a very fun hook. I like the escalating of her vocals, the ahs in the back do add some volume. The instrumental feels a little sludgy and slimy, but I do think it fits the lyrics and themes of toxic relationships pretty well. Hurt My Feelings is another fun catchy track. It's only 2 minutes long, but it's very dense. There's a cool R&B sheen to it. I wasn't big on the song on first listen until I realized it sounded like a sea shanty. The subject about liking someone taken adds a little more dimension to Tate, in which she's not a victim on this track. Grave was first teased on SNL. It's a pretty boilerplate Ryan Tedder ballad that reminded me of Cher Lloyd's mid-tempo work, ironically enough. It's not a bad song by any means, it's just one of the weaker tracks. I felt like the chorus was pretty solid, but the verses were not hitting for me, and the grave metaphor does not feel realized. I will say that the bridge infuses the song with life for a moment. Stay Done is a highlight for me. The guitar riff is distinct, it hooks you in. This was not produced by Ryan Tedder. It's probably the most romantic song on the record, despite it being about a relationship that should probably end. The chorus is just very clean and catchy to learn. We're best friends and enemies is such a basic line, but it really does register. Exits coming right after again really jars me, but this is a really upbeat, steamy bop. It may just be Greedy 2.0, but it's pretty distinct in its subject. It paints her as a chaotic lover who doesn't know what she wants, but owns it. Again, the mastery of pre-chorus to chorus is something that she has that we don't really see much of these days. It's why I feel like even with the songs being mad short, they do feel complete. The music video and the choreo again harkens back to when pop girls definitely had to sing and dance. We're Not Alike is a welcome detour towards a funky jazzy beat. It's one of the more experimental tracks and a highlight for me. This one's about a former best friend who betrays her and breaks girl code. Compared to the other tracks, it stands out both lyrically and sonically. The way that she sings You Wonder Why, especially in the bridge, really tickles the ear. I do think that this is one of the many directions that she should consider going in. Calgary is a neat, vulnerable track with an acoustic bass to it. It's about her home city of Calgary, and she talks about wanting to get out and live her life and not be drawn into the same old bad habits, and what if she doesn't make it. I'd like this track a bit more if it was a bit more specific about insecurities. This track also had some enunciation issues at certain points. Messier is the longest track on the record, and this is where the album started to sound a little too similar. Coming right after Calgary, even with a bit more thump in the chorus, I was a bit checked out, because it really just sounded pretty, but none of it stuck with me. The title track, Think Later, locked me back in. This one's a slick, chanty vibe. It really reminded me of Bad Girls by MIA. This one has a fun little story about a night out with a bad boy, and it's an absolute disaster. I really like the bridge being her telling herself to not worry. It adds a fun layer of self-doubt to the story. If I were seeing her live, this is a song that I'd want to see. Guilty Conscience is another highlight for me. It's produced by Tedder and Ilya. This one just has so many hooks built into it. The repetition of Live. I really like the flow on the pre-chorus, which really builds up to the chorus. It's mathematically right just to get stuck in your head. This one's just fun. I can imagine it actually being a single and a smash. The album closes out on 2 slow tracks, which I found a little disappointing. Want That Too is a solid track about her place as a young woman in the music industry. It speaks to the cost of time and life that goes into becoming a pop star. I really like the bridge because it has some edge to it. Take my youth and fuck me over, make me realize now I'm getting older is a strong line. The closer, Plastic Palm Trees, continues the metaphor of her relationship to the industry as a bad relationship. This one felt a bit repetitive coming after Want That Too, but it's actually a bit more catchier and hookier than that song. I did like the metaphor of the perfect window of life and that picture being plastic palm trees. Don't get me wrong, Think Later is a pretty solid pop record. It's not as focused or upbeat as I wanted it to be. There are a few bangers on here which I'm sure will chart. As for whether or not Tate is the next big pop star, it's really up to how this promotional cycle goes and what she's gonna do next that will cement her status. I'm not sold that she's the next Britney Spears like some gays have been telling me, but I do think that she does have major potential, and this record is a leg up from her previous work. I just didn't get a clear sense of who she was artistically or personally. I'm gonna rate this a solid 7.2 out of 10, and I actually do look forward to seeing what she does next. And that's a wrap on a quick review. Thank you so much for watching my channel. Thank you for supporting me. Shout out to my subscribers. Shout out to my members. I will see you next video.